Advanced analytics are taking over hockey as we know it. From seeing charts on broadcasts to articles about signings, you can't deny that you've been exposed and directed to a color-coded chart containing advanced metrics before. But not everybody understands the meaning behind the numbers. There is a lot to understand when learning about analytics, and it's honestly hard for somebody to explain. So let's start off with a process of learning analytics and understanding them. I have enlisted the help of a friend to do our best to explain behind advanced analytics. We will begin the video with some of the basics, so without further ado, let's get into it. Analytics are a systematic analysis of data and statistics. It's a formula used around the world for countless different things. One of those things is sports. Analytics have been a major part of baseball for decades. In fact, it was the main way the Oakland Athletics executive Billy Beane and Paul DePosta built a successful roster in 2002 with a tight budget, a story that would later be turned into the film Moneyball. Since then, teams around the sports world have been looking for the same success, building the same kind of model, with more teams implementing these metrics into their roster, building strategies every year. And the latest wave of the formula has come into the sport of hockey. Fans online have created their own formulas and charts, and media outlets and teams are starting to take notice. JFresh Hockey and Evolving Wild are two of the most prominent figures in the world of hockey analytics. Accessible to the public, well, athletic writer Dom Luszczyszyn has become one of the more notable figures employed by the growing sports journalism enterprise. And while it's relatively new to the sport, there is a lot to learn about the future of this game. We now get to look at our first chart of the video. This comes from JFresh. Let's break down this model. This is of Dougie Hamilton of the New Jersey Devils. Obviously, there is a lot that could potentially be overwhelming when you first look at this. There's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of colors, there's a lot of percentages, and there's even charts on the side that is a lot to comprehend. But let's start breaking it down. It's worth noting that the number in each column is the percentile of the player out of all NHLers, 99 being the 99th percentile of players being better than 99% of players, and 0% being the worst. The number is nothing but a categorization of how to evaluate that player at that certain skill. We start off with the biggest number on the chart, WAR. Wins above replacement. When noting a particular player's worth, the analytics community loves to use one statistic to judge a player's performance. WAR, or wins above replacement. It's a statistic whose concept was adopted from baseball. While it may seem like a complex metric to calculate, all the statistic measures is how many wins a single player contributes to his team's to a replacement level counterpart. Using JFresh's model, a WAR percentile below 25% labels a player as a sub-replacement level, a liability performance-wise. A WAR percentile around 25 to 40% represents a player as a replacement level player, someone who doesn't necessarily handicap your team in comparison to a sub-replacement one, but is still worse than league average. A WAR around 50% represents an average player. Not great, but not bad either. A WAR percentile ranging from 60 to 80% deems a player above average. Not a true superstar, but a nice, underrated commodity to have that can still contribute in all forms of the game. A WAR percentile higher than 85% considers a player as a star, one of the best in the league, and a player like Austin Matthews would have it around a 98 to a 100% WAR. So now that we have the biggest number out of the way, let's get into some more of the smaller metrics used in these charts. Starting off with EV defense. This stands for even strength defense. This shows the defensive impact a player has on his team, preventing scoring chances and all-around defensive play. This is probably the easiest stat to understand, as it is just pretty much basic defense and expected goals against put into a percentile. EV offense. So it's even strength offense. Same thing as EV defense, but it's an analysis using expected goals for, which is essentially a calculated estimation of the scoring chances created by a certain player throughout the game. On the chart, it's a larger sample size than a site like MoneyPuck or even an RAPM chart. QOC, quality of competition. This shows how tough or weak the player's opponents are. Fourth liners would naturally be the lowest compared to playing on the top line against the likes of Matthews, McDavid, Kane, and others, would put that player with the stronger quality of competition and the higher end of the league. QOT is quality of teammates. This is evaluation of the line mates that a certain player has, the player that is in the spotlight with this chart. So Dougie Hamilton, if he was playing with Jacob Slavin, his quality of teammate would be higher than if he was playing with a guy like Jake Bean or another lesser used or lesser known player on a defense. G/60. This stands for even goals per 60 minutes. This is an evaluation of the average goals scored by the player per 60 minutes of ice time. So a player like McDavid would be at the same level as Austin Matthews, 100%. While a player such as Nate Thompson would be around a 25% or lower level, as he's getting a lot less chances playing on a fourth line than if he was playing with a guy like McDavid or Draisaitl or someone like that. A1/60. It's basically the exact same as the stat that we just went over, however, it is primary assists out of 60 minutes of ice time, and it's pretty easy to understand, just calculated with how many primary assists that player gets on average. That's basically all you have to know about that one. Penalties. This is assessed by a player's penalties drawn. A newer change that JFresh made was that if a player drives a play and draws a penalty, it will affect that player's penalties, not his line mates. Finishing is based on the individual's scoring above expected, and is a really useful evaluation. A player like Brady Tkachuk could have a great EV offense, but still have a very low percent in finishing. Dougie Hamilton, who is the primary example used in this video, is far above average, with a 95th percentile in finishing, despite not getting as much scoring chances as a player like Tyson Barrie. Power play is a stat mainly calculated by how a player affects his team's power play. The only qualifications is that you must play 1 minute per game on the power play. Penalty kill is the same as power play, but used on the penalty kill, obviously, and it's a very useful metric as well. The graphs are fairly self-explanatory. You have expected goals and EV defense versus EV offense. Then you also have the WAR percentile timeline, which is very useful to see how the player has progressed or regressed throughout time, and if they're able to stay consistent at that level. And if you have a really high WAR, it's obviously going to be harder to stay at a consistent level compared to if you have a 25 or lower than average WAR and you're just playing 12 to 13 minutes a game. But if you're playing 20 minutes a game, wins above replacement is going to be way higher than others, and it's probably my favorite stat that's used. It's really easy to understand and really easy to explain. And yeah, that is the JFresh explanation of how his models work. It's starting to get used everywhere now, and JFresh, all the credit of this video goes to JFresh, as I've seen a lot of people write off advanced analytics just because they don't understand them. I was kind of one of those people at one time. I didn't get analytics, so I didn't use analytics. analytics, but now it's an everyday evaluation and assessment of how I see a player. Like, just because Seth Jones might be considered good in the eyes of some people, doesn't mean he's a good player when you go to the metrics of it. And RAPM charts are not as useful to use, but that's all for the JFresh Hockey. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you to Captain Levi, aka South Korea, for helping me with this. Follow our Substack as well. Link is in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.